For a VR title, it's only going to set you back about 30 bucks. Into the Radius is an amazing game with excellent value per dollar. The base game will take you about 30 to 40 hours to complete, and once you've done that, it's easy to think, wow, cool game, and proceed to uninstall. But don't be that guy. As someone with over 2 years experience and around 150 hours in this game, let me tell you, there's so much more to do. So what I've done here is compile a list of all the most notable playstyles that I'm aware of to help you get the best bang for your buck. I'm going to break down the list starting with runs that anyone can do and gradually moving on to the much more intense and challenging runs that are left to the more hardcore fan base and masochists. First, we will cover the Quest compatible only runs and then move on to the PC VR only. As always, I'll leave timestamps below if you want to skip around. Starting off, we have Ironman Realistic. This can be done by itself or in conjunction with most other runs in the game, as this is just an adjustment to the settings when you start a new game. If you are trying to 100% into the Radius, then you will have to beat the game in Ironman mode at least once, as it is required for a Steam achievement. Ironman mode mainly only removes your ability to abuse the quick save system, something that now makes deaths much more punishing. The other noteworthy item to point out about this is that on realistic difficulty, anomalies will now deal significantly more damage and loot sells for much less, meaning that you will need to be more careful with your money and how you spend it. This will require you to save up for longer to get that gun that you've wanted to run with. I tend to run Ironman Realistic as the baseline settings moving forward for all these other runs. Now, on to the first real challenge that I would recommend for Quest users. Weapons only. This is a very simple run that has very easy to follow rules. Pick a weapon type and use only that weapon type. This most often will boil down into a shotgun run, sniper run, pistols only run, or just knives only. You can also just use the starter PM pistol as well if you really want to challenge yourself. These runs can vary drastically depending on which platform you are most comfortable with. I've done shotgun and sniper run and they were both a blast. It's not terribly different from the base game, but adds a nice twist and increases the difficulty a bit. By only using specific weapons, you will need to alter your playstyle accordingly. Shotguns are great up close, but are a nightmare when dealing with further away enemies, and snipers are the exact opposite. I've yet to do a knives only run, and I likely won't ever, but the sky's the limit on this one. Just tell yourself you're going to use this weapon, only use that weapon. These runs will take you about 15 to 20 hours each, while the difficulty increase is dependent on which weapon you decide to run with. The Pacifist Run. Now that you've played with all the different types of weapons in the game, congratulations. Next up is the Pacifist Run. Basically, the rules here are simple. You don't get to use any weapons or exploits to harm the entities of the Radius. This makes you a sitting duck for all the enemies in the game and will completely alter the feel of the game and the maps in it. Instead of finding defensive positions to fight from, you will now be looking for ways to sneak around as long as you possibly can, and then running for your life once the enemy does inevitably find you. You will be spending a lot of time exploring routes that you've never even considered before, and this is where I really got to see a lot more of the maps and what they have to offer. For this type of run, I recommend lots of stims and mainly only going out at night. While I did start a Pacifist Run, I have yet to finish it. I have a couple videos on it, so go check them out if you want, but I'd imagine this run will take you about 25 to 30 hours to complete, with lots of saves coming. I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10 on difficulty. Deathless. Now, for the newest self-imposed and hardest difficulty, Deathless. The Deathless Run is something I have attempted several times and failed several times. This is definitely a skill check, as you need to understand the mechanics of the game to make it out of this. One little slip or lapse in judgment on your part can very quickly lead to your death and the end of the run. However, tack this self-imposed modifier onto your run and you've likely just cemented yourself as a hardcore fan of ITR. I myself am not at this level of skill and quite likely never will be, but if you have the time, patience, and practice to accomplish it, it is by no means impossible. For you quest-only users out there, a Deathless Pacifist Run is likely the target for you to try and beat, as I can't think of anything more challenging than this for you. I'm guessing in the dark here, but I'd estimate this run will take about 50 to 70 hours to finally beat it. I'm going to give this, and any other Deathless Run for that matter, a 10 out of 10 on difficulty, without any hesitation. Now, moving on to the PC-only options for all my fellow and future PC VR gamers out there. We will be starting with the infamous 1.0 version. It's less of a challenge run and will feel more like a complete overhaul, as the maps, enemies, missions, and some base mechanics were entirely reworked. If you can play this version, you need to do it. I'd even go as far as to say that this should be the first run you try after beating 2.0. And that's because it feels and plays out like it's a completely different game. I have an entire video series dedicated to this and how it differs from 2.0. If you want to go see the details, go check it out. But in short, it's like comparing apples and oranges. I really don't want to spoil this one for you, so please just get in there and do it. Rushing through the game took me about 25 hours, and it was as if I was playing Into the Radius for the first time again. 10 out of 10, must play. Then there's the modded runs, which can drastically alter the gameplay. With these, you can add swords, shields, and even John Cena's chair. But the main ones we're going to cover today are the overhaul mods, starting with the Scavenger Mod. This is the mod you install when you want to let your inner rat out. What makes this one so special is that all the loot in the game can now be found out in the Radius. That might not seem like a big deal, but when food, meds, armor, weapons, and attachments are all left up to RNG, you will quite literally, as the name of the mod implies, be scavenging through the wasteland for anything you can find. This is something that I wish was included in the base game. This mod also comes with an option to disable the shop, and for the best experience, disable it. For one last recommendation when playing this mod, make your base out in the Radius. It's a lot of fun and helps with an added level of immersion. 10 out of 10 mod that will likely double your playtime in this game. Now, last but not least, it's the ever so popular Stalker Mod. This mod and its most recent update has upped the difficulty to 11. When on the hardest settings and playing as Deathless, this run is likely impossible to complete and will serve as a great wall to bang your head on.
Insta-dead. Okay.
When I first found out who Synthetizard was, arguably the most skilled ITR player that I'm aware of, he was trying to beat this mod. Now, a whole year later, he is still trying to beat this mod. So, after talking about how hard it is, what does it actually do? Like the Scavenger Mod, it also randomizes loot, but in place of disabling the shop, it heavily increases the cost of all items in the game. Rifts now also spawn enemies significantly faster, which means you need to push aggressively or you will fail to make any progress. Not only that, but now any enemy can exist in any area of the Radius and have better hearing. This means that if you fire an unsuppressed shot, or heaven forbid a shotgun, you better believe that in about 30 seconds, half of the entire map is now firing on you and you are scared crying behind a little rock.
Why are there so many pagos?
I cannot emphasize enough that this mod is likely not intended to be beaten on the hardest difficulty and in one life. This is by far the most challenging run you will come across. So with that, hopefully you found something useful out of this video. If you have any other ideas for types of runs, leave them down below in the comments. Feel free to like, share, comment on the video, as it will help me out a ton. But until next time, explorers, see you later.